Well, I mean, I did too,
but. Amazing.
Oh my gosh. I was just looking at me.
Oh,
It looks fantastic.
I'd say you couldn't look better. Oh, yeah.
There you go. Oh, it's fun looking out at the sea of sad.
Right. We got on our mask.
Yeah.
The beast that Brian hath wrought.
Right? Oh.
Samuel. Samuel? I think he's in here somewhere. Like hiding. Going to see.
About a minute before go time.
Give you what?
Panel rooms like movie theaters.
Oh, like stacked up so you could see all the people?
Yeah.
Yeah. There is no Dana. That's me.
Why did you put this on? Ever getting longer.
Oh, honey, that's a baby.
Mine is.
I'm still a newbie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I haven't started putting mine on yet.
Right. All right.
I was really tempted to put whatever. Just to see.
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, I did.
That would be
this
fun.
was recorded. Somebody was talking about it on some podcast or something, and my brother-in-law saw it and asked me about it because I don't know if it was here or home, but somebody asked me, not knowing who I was, have you read the books?
That's amazing.
Tell me about it.
All right.
Ready?
Ready?
I should have answered like this week.
I'm rereading The Great Hunt right now.
This week my wife is reading it first time.
Okay. I'm not very far.
She's loving
All right.
I just had the choice.
You guys ready? Can you hear me? All right. I know, right?
I know. People always ask
Think this thing is live. Can you guys hear me at all? Can you hear me?
It changes.
Like,
It's probably between the two topics.
any better? Sorry, I don't want to get too much feedback, so I'll try to project.
And this was
All right, you guys ready to roll? All
emotion.
right, all right. Welcome to Wheel of Cultures. We need a big spinning wheel back here. I'm Dariush Sadai. I'm your friendly moderator today. Kind of here to keep the conversation flowing. I'm going to have these guys all introduce themselves, and we'll kind of go through some general topics. If you guys have a question while we're having a specific discussion around something, feel free to reach out. Somebody's back there with a microphone, and we'll get some individual questions, and then we want to reserve maybe the last like 15 minutes for just like an audience Q&A, so you guys can ask away on anything that wasn't touched. Say what? Can you hear me now? Better? All right.
So I'm loud. It's okay. Okay. All right. I'm Michael Livingston, author of Origins of the Wheel of Time, and I'm excited to be here.
I'm Maria Simmons. 27 years, 6 months, and 14 days ago, I went to work for Robert Jordan, and it's been a great ride since.
I'm Dana Lou, or Zool, and I moderate on various Discord and YouTube stations, channels, whatever you call them.
You guys don't have to have your mustaches on the whole time.
Sure we do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God.
Why don't we start with what's your favorite kind of real life inspiration that you guys have come across? The two of you know this better than everybody.
Am I starting this?
Yeah.
My favorite real life inspiration. I get asked this a lot, and I think my answer keeps changing. It's like anything that you love this much. It changes over time, like and kind of what your mood is. But pretty often it comes back to Aludra and the sources of her. Are we like, what's our spoiler level?
We are a full
Full spoiler.
spoiler kind of panel in here.
Just
So is there
beware,
anybody in
full
here who's
spoilers.
not read the whole series?
Full spoiler. Okay, yeah. So we all know how Aludra turns out as an alien at the end. Is that? Oh, was that not in the? Yeah. Wait a second. Let me look that up. Yeah, Aludra. With the fireworks, gunpowder, basically, like figuring that all out. And that he had used this particular event in American history that was not exactly a well-known event to build that and to kind of build her character. I just found that utterly marvelous because, like, how did you get to that deep cut? But it's so perfect. So that's my answer.
Okay, and like Michael, it does change over time, but one that just amused me because it was the first one I was sort of aware of. I was a fan before I started working for Robert Jordan. And after I became a fan, I went to visit my mother-in-law, and she had a Genair stove. And I looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, it's the Gen Isle." And I was like, that's really funny. And then I started working for Robert Jordan, and I went into the kitchen for something one day, and yes, he did have a Genair too. And I was like, yes.
Well, Michael stole mine. Mine is also Aludra, and like you said, it changes over time.
Yeah.
So when I was reading this, when I got to the A's and I got to Aludra, I was like, "Oh, that is amazing." Yes, I know it's your favorite, Brian. But another one for me then is the Israelites and how that is part of the IEL influence. And I love how there are, he uses like some of the Catholicism in one place and he uses this religion in another place, and how he uses those to blend all throughout. And if you just open your eyes and look, you'll just see it everywhere. So as a general influence, I love how he brought all of those in different places.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think one of my favorite ones is right now. It's all about Perrin for me for some reason. And I think it's interesting that he used like metaphors like Perun and Thor, and then Perrin creates Mahalaner, which is also part of his inspiration through Thor. So I like that whole full circle kind of thing. I always find that an interesting thing. That's where I'm at. So
Team Perrin.
Team Perrin.
Hashtag Team Perrin.
I like a muscly. What can I say?
No comment.
With that said, so what are some of the things that you found during your research, either you or Maria, like either one of you, that maybe didn't get used or didn't kind of get realized in the books themselves, that he's kind of something he's toying with that got ditched?
I have been unable to think of really anything specifically. At some point, he was reading a series of books. It was from an Asian author, and he loved the names. So he had one of my assistants go through all those books and write down all the names from the books so he could play with them because he always needed new names. I don't know if he ever did do that, but he may have, because I couldn't find that list later.
Yeah, I haven't seen that list.
Yeah.
Michael, in your research, how many lists of names did you find in the notes?
Yeah, as Maria knows, there's a lot, and they're interesting because many of them are the same list. He would just change the font, which is a total hoot because you can like see when he was doing it. Like, I don't know if those of you who are old would remember crackling font, which was this font that kind of looked like it was on fire. And yeah, at one point he was using that. It was clear. He's like, ooh, look at that. And it's, oh yeah, we got Comic Sans in there, baby. It's legit. It was,
Times New Roman.
yeah, he was a TNR guy.
14 point.
Yeah. So yeah, there were tons of lists of names, and some of them broken down into sort of cultural groups, right? You know, that I'm getting names from this kind of culture, this sort of thing, and some of them just like it's just a list of names, you know. And the best ones are the ones where he's written on it. You can see him like, you know, kind of like star this one. I like this one, right? That's too close to this. Yeah, there's sort of a proximity there that's really amazing. That answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm sorry.
Right.
No pressure.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I might have to
how
read
many
this
lists of
book.
Names did you come across? Right? Like, how many of those names did you have to deal with?
Oh, at one point fairly early on, he realized his files were a mess. You know, he had like 5 Aes Sedai files, and none of them were exactly alike. And he decided he would trust me to, organize those files so he would have one Aes Sedai file with everything in it. And he's like, you'll get spoilers, and I was like, it's fine, no probs. So, I mean, then the first one he gave me was Aes Sedai Individual, which had a lot of names, and some of them he had not used, and I think some of them he never did use. And of course, the first thing I looked for was Baron. But yeah, there were so many lists of names, and he used WordPerfect for writing.
Perfect.
And a WordPerfect file's extension is .wpd, and he didn't like that. So it'd be like Aes Sedai Individual 001, 002.
Oh, gee.
And I mean, he had this, and so it ended up, there were just so many things to try and put together and get one list, but he would always manage to come up with another one.
It feels like there would just be like this endless list of names to choose from, but it's kind of amazing to me when I do see this stuff. It's like just how organized it did kind of all turn out. It's like a remarkable amount of consistency in all of the material.
I just remembered one other little story. He also, this was actually before he gave me files, he asked me to clean up the raw glossary, which that was our basic style sheet that we were using. It eventually morphed into the companion. And so I'm going through the raw glossary, making sure the spelling is right. It's just the chapter it's in. And then there was one name, and it had a chapter. I'm pretty sure it was Great Hunt. And I read that chapter and read that chapter and then that name's not in there. And I'm like, Jim, this guy's not in here. And he goes, I know I put him in. And I said, then I'm sorry. He must have got edited out. So, but I mean, it was like that.
Yeah, the organization is something else. I mean, and continues to be. If you do visit the papers, please do so respectfully. Don't be like, no photographs, no photocopying. Like that's, if we want people to be able to continue to access it, you have to treat it right. Follow the rules, please. But you'll very quickly also see that it's like, man, how do you get through this stuff? Because it has an organization, but it's a lot of undated stuff. It's a lot of like sifting to figure out like which comes before which. At some point, I'm going to hand over my files that I've got to special collections on how I constructed the order, and this is what it is. I haven't done that yet, but at some point.
That is very kind of you.
Well, it's for people, and they want it, but I want to make sure it's nailed down before I hand it out. But that was one of the early things I had to do actually to write the book. Was I need to have everything in order. If I'm going to talk about his writing process, I need to know what comes first, right, and second and third. And that was difficult when only one of the pieces was dated. So,
is there anything in there that you think he kind of would have changed, like based on?
I can only think of one thing, and I honestly think it was a copy editing error, because we did have those a couple of times. but I forgot what book we were working on, and he gave me the manuscript, and he had Weraman Sanaigo, Sanaigo, and I changed it to Santiago. And he looked at me and he said, "That's not supposed to be Santiago." And I said, "That's what it's been in all the other books." He said,
It is
"Oh."
now.
He says,
Such
"Oh,
canon.
I guess the copy editor changed it because, of course, Santiago is
It's a real thing.
it's
Yeah.
a real
St.
thing."
James.
Yeah.
So, and because they also, that happened, people are carrying around scripts, SCRIP, for carrying their things. And when we went from, I think it was Dragon Reborn hardcover to paperback, the copy editor changed every one of them to script,
Oh.
which I got to go back and change back.
Yeah.
So,
Copy editors.
it's
Also,
serious.
thank God for copy editors.
Seriously,
Yeah.
Terry was our copy editor, Terry McGarry, and she was fabulous. She had to copy edit at least 2 or 3 books in 3 days.
Oh my God.
No.
That's nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Nightmare fuel. But amazing copy editor. I mean, she also did the copy edit on Origins, and there were a couple things that had gone through all of us, and she was like, "Well, wait, what about?" I'm like, "Oh, thank you.
She is fabulous.
Thank you for catching that." Yeah.
All right. Well, can we move on to number 4?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
All right. Some of my favorite things, and I'm still finding them in the book, is the all of the myths and legends. And I'm very fascinated by Robert Jordan's way of going. So if we have something we're reading in the book and it's a legend, it can harken back to our time. And we see how it's morphed, and the whole idea of, facts becomes myths, becomes legend, but then how that moves back around. So something we're reading in the book in the 4th age or the 3rd age or whatever, can then become our myths back in the 1st age. And so I kind of wanted to know, are there any favorites of yours that you see this sort of like cyclical thing? For instance, I know we have like Molyneux, those kinds of things. So
My favorite has always been the Mercedes symbol
Yeah.
because, there was instant recognition.
Mhm.
It reeked of pride. It was like, Mercedes. Yeah. I love that one.
Do you think he would have made that Tesla today?
Oh, that's a good question.
Depends on what the neighbor drove, I think.
Yeah, right.
The neighbor drives a Tesla.
Well, there you go. That's what it would have been. No, that's I have 2 favorites. When it comes to that stuff, one is In the Eye of the World. That speech that we get from all of our favorite Gleeman, which he talks about Mosk and all that stuff, and Len and all that. Like, just because that was one of the first moments as a reader in middle school that I was like, wait. And the first sort of glimmer I could see of what he was doing. And so, like, sentimentally, that means a lot to me. But the other one for me is the saber-tooth tiger skull. And that's, again, kind of sentimental because they were kind enough to give that to me. So, like, I'm like, it's right there. I keep it on actually Jim's desk in my office. So that's definitely a favorite.
did you have a favorite there, Jason?
Well, I kind of covered mine at the beginning, which is the sort of Perrin, Mjolnir, like all of that, kind of roaming around in that. But there's so many of those little, like, kind of Easter egg moments throughout the books that you're like, wait a minute, is that real or am I making that up? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anyone out there? Favorites? Any of those moments?
Tough crowd.
Oh, yeah. And I believe I jumped the gun and skipped a question.
No, go ahead.
If you want to go back to 3.
Go back to 3. Well, yeah, I mean, I think some of this is like with all of the depth and all the different types of things that kind of hit the books, throughout. What was that research process like? That you kind of have the idea and then you're like, here, go find this, go give me context or.
A lot of it he just did. I didn't start working on the books until book 7, and he did give me research projects. like I had to go find what a baby felt when it was being born, which at the time I had no idea why. And I was really worried that somehow Rand was going to go back and be born and, and so, but it was the first sister ceremony. So that was cool. And he asked me to research sheep shearing for the Ravens prologue. And I actually farmed that out to a friend who was really good at research. And, but a lot of stuff he just knew. He read fanatically. At one point he was reading probably a book a day, at least every day.
Yeah.
And it was not at all fantasy, because when he was writing fantasy, he had trouble reading fantasy because it was just too close. But I started cataloging his library in 1996. And before he died, we were up to 15,000 books. And they were on every subject under the earth. He was a very smart man. He knew a lot. He remembered things. And things I thought were odd sometimes would just strike him. And I wish I could give an example. I can't. I just remember it happening, that something would come up and just strike him. And he's like, I got to figure out a way to use that. But he was, a lot of it, I mean, he was so smart. And he had a really good friend, Mike Ford, who wrote as John M. Ford. And Mike was absolutely so brilliant. And sometimes Mike would come to visit and they would be sitting talking, and I would walk in and it would be like, almost like they were speaking another language. They were going so fast and covering so much. So he really did a lot of his own research. And of course, when Alan came on board, he took over the research section. I know he had to research how to clean silk and that kind of environment, and a lot of other things too. But that was the kind of thing we researched, just weird small things. But all the battles, he read about all the battles, all the people in history, the Aludra stuff. That was all him.
Okay. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, I feel like there's so much being pulled from so many different things, right? Whether that's from various religious kind of organizations, real life historical people, myths, Arthurian legends. It's just sort of everywhere. So you're like, how deliberate was he really being? Or was that just sort of like his mind just sort of creating hodgepodge?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I'll just say it was, what Maria is describing is, 100% true. And that, to try and sort of reconstruct backwards or whatever, right? To kind of give people insight into this and try and find that stuff. I mean, it's daunting, right? I need to read how many books now? Like I need to access what? Because it isn't siloed information that he was dealing with. It's not like, oh, just learn everything there is about this subject and you've got it. He was so broadly read, and that is incredibly difficult because our system of education doesn't really encourage that too much. We instead kind of narrow, and he was like going the other way, and that's where a lot of the beauty and life of the text I think comes from, is because it's pulling on so many different things. But it does make it that much more hard to try and keep up with him, essentially, for the purposes of understanding how he did what he did. So yeah, he was unbelievably smart, daunting.
Question. Dana, did you want to ask?
No, we have one in the audience. Can we
Oh,
take
audience.
one?
Awesome.
It's kind of a silly question. My daughter named her first daughter Leia. Okay, after Princess Leia, of course. They had a dog, Boba Fett. Okay, her second daughter is named Avienda. Hello. Anyway, some weird thing happened, and we realized that if you spell Leia backwards, which is Leia, it's ale. Which blew our minds because here she named her second daughter Avienda, who was ale. And could he possibly have taken the name Leia from Star Wars and made it ale for the people?
Take it.
Probably not. Sorry.
That might be cool.
It would be cool. So And I mean, maybe, right? Like we don't know. The reason I say sort of probably not is I never found an instance in which he was creating names by flipping things or doing that. He wanted it to be organically correct, if you will, right? Like the way that our language developed from Middle English, that there be that kind of connective tissue that you could work it through. And I have to do this because it calls out how amazing Maria is and the dumb luck of everything. There was, I thought, one exception to that rule. One exception, and it was Z-maze, which is the word maze changed around. And it really upset me that was the case because everything else did not do that. And here was one that he did. And I was like, come on, dang it. And actually in the text, originally I had it like that's what it was. And Maria was doing the copy edits. And what happened?
Oh, I read that day and I was like, that's really interesting. I wonder why he did that for that one. And I am a Jeopardy fan. And that night I turned on Jeopardy. Amy was the champion then, and Ken Jennings was hosting. Ken Jennings, who used to be Brandon's roommate. And the question was,
what is the scientific name
for what is the scientific name? And I jumped up and started, oh my God. My son is sitting there going, Mom, what's the matter? And I was like, it's Semai. It's not an anagram. It's just Semai. And I'm texting Michael.
Was that, guess what? I'm like, oh my, thank God you were watching TV.
I mean, it was the same day it came across. I mean, because if it had been a month later, I don't know if I would have really noticed it then. Definitely not a month earlier.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's in the book. It's the last footnote.
The last footnote, number 95.
Yeah, which I actually did some rearranging to make sure that'd be the last footnote. So the last footnote would be, isn't Maria awesome, right? So no pressure. But yeah, that was what I thought was the one exception to that rule, and it turned out, nope, it's not. That still conformed to the way he was doing stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it wouldn't be in keeping with the rest of the fleet.
Right.
So it'd be more organic, like we see him going from King Amen to Emmonsfield.
Right.
Over 1,000 years or however long, 2,000 years. So that shows a progression. And so we see lots of names that are similar to ours, but a couple of letters different. One dropped here, another there, so that it could have come from names in our time.
Right. And again, this is linguistics. I mean, I do a little bit of this in the book, just to kind of try and, if you don't know Middle English, first of all, get on that.
What's wrong with you people?
I mean, come on, let's read Chaucer in the original, everybody. Here's what. Anyway, to help you kind of see, our language does this, right? Our language has been changing. If I start speaking in Middle English, you'll be kind of I sort of get it, right? But it's a little bit. That's not how we say that anymore. And that's how he wanted it to work. And that's exactly what we say. It's cool.
Can you speak?
Yeah. In Middle English? Van het april de show resort the drocht of March hath perset to the road, and bar that every vine and switch the cure of which virtue engendered is before. When Zephyrus egg with his sway to breath and spirit hath and every holt and hay, and the tender crop is and the young. No, it's whatever. What way Gardena in your volume failed could not bring you through on? Who thought Applingus Elm Fremadon? Off should shedding shop in the 3 out. That's the opening of Beowulf. Yeah.
I was going to say Beowulf.
Yeah. For those following along at home. Yeah. The other one's the opening of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at parties. Hey there, you want to hear Beowulf? Where are you going?
You're going to the wrong party.
Oh.
Seriously.
Obviously. Some hands up.
Question?
there. So with all this work you did with Robert Jordan and his wide breadth of knowledge and all of his research and his notes and his just for great critical thinking, how has that inspired you in your writing and Maria in your editing with other authors? How has that inspired your work, and has that changed how you write? And what has that done for you, now in the current age?
I don't work with other authors.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, the only other editing, I did some freelance stuff once upon a time. I guess Michael is another.
Yeah. You read my book, but you told me you read my book.
That was all earlier than this. Wheel of Time is pretty much my life.
For me, as somebody who also writes in fiction and nonfiction, the fiction part has been the most like affected by it, right? Because when you get that, as deep into his mind as I got over the course of the project, which was was just day and night. I was living and breathing this stuff. And it's somebody whose work you admired and at some level kind of aspire to, and then to just access it that deeply, you can't help but be inspired by that, right? But also like daunted, right? Because you're seeing how much work went into the final product, and it's staggering. It's just staggering the amount of work. So it's daunting, but it's also inspiring, and it has definitely, in the fiction that that I've been writing, then and ever since, it's informed by that, which seems to me to make a difference. I mean, obviously I'm not the reader, but for me as the writer, I feel like it makes a difference. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I hate microphones. Is this what I sound like to everyone? All right, cut. So I would attribute all Robert Jordan's work to be esoteric in nature, and to buff it off of a comment that you made that, yes, it is encapsulating and growing upon other mythologies and other ideas. So you started this little bubble, my thought, and I'm first time reader. Would you argue against the fact that when we have the first 4 books, I would argue, we have very well-known ideas to the Western reader? We have names like Egwene. We have the term Sangreal, which is like very Arthurian legend. So once we ripple away from the other books, are we kind of going through the idea of like what you established of a Western reader growing as an ideal? And then we're going into like Eastern, Western mythology, and we're starting with the known, and now we're growing into like different mythologies. Are we just going to encapsulate that it's everything? It's a bit of everything, and then Robert Jordan did this masterpiece of a bit of column A, column B, or are we just growing as a reader, and are we being encouraged to keep on going and growing into other mythologies? Like, are we going beyond where we're encouraged to go?
And welcome to my TED Talk.
I think there's. Oh, this thing keeps turning on. Because I think people are watching at home or something. What's up? So I think there's absolutely part of this is what you're saying, right? That you are moving, and he very deliberately did this, right? I'm going to start you with familiarity and move you to unfamiliarity, right? You can see this in the Eye of the World. The first part is very Lord of the Rings. It's Tolkien, right? And and some people go, oh, that's it's terrible. Like that was very purposeful. You could disagree with that purpose, but you have to at least acknowledge that's what's going on. To some degree, that there's an element to which that is happening mythologically as well. But I think I don't think that's him moving into those spaces so much as our recognition that he's moved into those spaces. That they're there sort of innately from the beginning in the construct of what he has done. And even though sort of organically he moves away from models, he doesn't move away from where the end point is going to be, which is built on those same models, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think there's an element to which we're moving out of the Western space, but it's meant to be very, very organic, and it's meant to be ever continuing, right? There's no final answers. I mean, how did brand like pipe, right? There's there's a deliberateness to that.
And there's also, when we start off, we're in a very small area of the world, and we only know a few people. And as it keeps growing, we meet the IEL, we meet the Sean Chan. That is opportunity to bring in more rare things that we didn't have in book 2. I mean, we saw a couple IEL, but their whole way of life and beliefs and everything didn't come up until book 4, really.
Yeah, like the depth of what we're learning from their culture. So there's a couple of online questions throw out here. Make sure our live stream people are getting some love. One is from Liz, and she's asking, are there any notes that were found that could not be linked back to any known character? Like, are there some who is this person? Where was he going here? And that just never happened.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, nothing huge, but yeah, there's notes that he was clearly making notes on this, and then it didn't make it in. I mean, or it made it in somewhere that we can't recognize, right? That it was a little piece of this, a little piece of that. Yeah, there were definitely things where I'm looking at this note where is that? Where'd that happen? And yeah, I couldn't find it.
Any theories on who they might be?
No. I'm a theory avoider.
A theory avoider. I like that.
I'm avoidance of theory.
All right, and one more online question from Chris, which is, how many direct clues did Jordan leave about where he got specific notes, and how much had he figured out by being an expert like mine? Hey, am I reading that right? Did he leave a lot of stuff around what he was doing? Like, how specific? I guess that's what
There's a
I'm
lot of stuff
understanding.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of stuff.
There's more words in the notes than there are in the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time's big, but the notes are bigger.
If I remember correctly, Brandon tried to make a document with all of the notes to make one gigantic document that crashed his computer.
Yeah.
It's huge. And yeah, just trying to grapple with all. It's just a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff there. And some of if the question is, I'm not quite sure, but the question is, when we say something is the case in Origins, is that a direct note from if it's a direct note, it's quoted, right? And I cite it as such. I try to do that consistently. And some of it is high, how the percentage is, right? But a high percentage, we're really pretty sure that's where this thing came from. We don't have a note, right? But that's where it came from.
Correspondence.
Right.
It can't be anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, is that 100% or 99.9?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Close enough.
In terms of, moving outside of the Western comfort space, we were actually just talking about that in the music panel about the show soundtrack. And I was wondering, so there's this show based on the Wheel of Time, and have you listened to the soundtrack much? And if so, do you have any particular favorites that you have enjoyed in the soundtrack? Because we feel like he did a really great job bringing in all those cultural influences. Lauren Balfe, the composer. Sorry, I put you on the spot a little bit, but even sections or part, what was happening in the action when you enjoyed the score?
You got one? You don't have one?
No. I need to rewatch and pay more attention to things like that, but I was just kind of glued to the TV for everything, watching the actors and what they were doing. And I am not the most musical person in the world. So.
I'm just wondering.
We need the mic. It's just for our online people and for the recording.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, question for each of you. Have you worked on all of the Wheel of Time projects you want to work on in your lifetime? Is there more coming? If there is, please give us some hints. And if not, are there any other projects that you'd like to share with us?
Maria.
I'm just gonna have to recuse myself.
Fair enough.
That's simply a recusal, and we are not the sort of people that read into those things.
Not.
It's a great question. That's a great question.
Maria, is your microphone on? They're saying they can't hear you online.
They keep turning off. It's battery low, so
Okay.
keep turning it back on.
I think
Is
I'm
that
back.
a WAFO as in a wait and find out?
Wait and find out. WAFO.
Oh, WAFO, that was what I used for watch and find out when people ask me stuff about the TV show, which I really knew nothing about anyway.
Well, now we have like MAFO, which is waiting for you to tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
WAFO? You? WAFO.
That's probably why those batteries were here.
Well, they changed them out.
Oh.
Okay, when you were doing your research, was there anything that you found surprising? What stood out as like, wow, a wow moment that you came across?
I mean, for me, the most surprising thing. There were so many. The thing that sticks out most in my sort of like core memories, if you will, is finding that piece of paper with the, kind of diagram, right? That this person is that person, which I put in the book, because I didn't expect that, right? It was like I in my own notes basically had that, right? And I'm like looking for more evidence. Hey, there you go, that thing. And so I'm like looking, well, let me find evidence to prove that is the case, right? So I can present it to readers. And that piece of paper was just kind of actually in a random pile of stuff. And I'm going through and like, what is this? This is a grocery list. What are we doing? And then there's this paper, like, oh my God, like, look at this. So that was, that's not even, put it back on. For me, that was just mind blowing to hold it. And I just held it for the longest time. Too cool. Turn it off again. It's just dead. It's just dead. I'll use that one. Hey, everybody.
You have another, after this question, can we move on? Okay.
Well, then I'll keep it kind of tongue in cheek for the last question. But over the decades reading it, I kind of felt like each book kind of explored a different culture. And it felt like, especially with Knife and Dreams, like he was trying to complete every culture before he left. But one thing that I noticed throughout the whole series was Burundi always supposed to be like a New Jersey of the world? Because there was never a mention other than like that style. And in your notes, did you find more context to that country and part?
Oh my God. I've had some experiences in New Jersey that just flashed back. So, no, New Jersey. No, it was Florida. Oh, be here all week. No, there's nothing. Great question.
That is a good question. Huh.
You're on.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Did you have more? Did you want to
No, I was just saying that was a great question. I have no clue.
All right. So I know that your field is in military history, battles, and all of that, and you've recently been doing research and on various battles and places. So you have talked about Dumais Wells being really your favorite battle in the series. And I had a specific question about that because as I was reading your entry, it mentions how Muhammad like prayed and there were a host of angels, like 1,000 angels or whatever coming down, which, so in that entry, is that supposed to be reminiscent of like the Ashaman coming in and helping saving that? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Could that also be the heroes being called down to save at Falma? Because they literally are like angels coming in to turn the battle.
Yeah.
Is there anything, did you ever see anything that could be a possibility?
Not that I can think of in the notes, but I mean, it's absolutely applicable, right? I mean, totally applicable. The Dumais Wells intro, I will say, that would be twice as long if I wrote it now.
Awesome.
I found more stuff on that. But
Second
yeah.
edition. Got it.
But yeah, that yeah, I mean, it's applicable, and he wasn't exclusive, right? Just because he used something in one place, he could use it somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, he did this fairly often. Yeah.
Did you have more on battles that you would like to share? What were some of your favorite things in discovering battles that he used, influences, that kinds of things? Considering that this is your field and you would pick up on more of that than in, most people.
Yeah, I love, obviously I love the battles. Like you said, this is what I do. So I'm kind of into it. Yeah, the thing about the battles were the ones that I couldn't figure out. Those were the most frustrating because, and there's a few of them I still don't know. Some I've figured out since publication. But even throwaway things, where Matt will remember about, it's just like a throwaway line, right? Like, oh, there was that time at Cowansport or whatever. Like, no, that's actually based on something. Like that didn't come in a vacuum. Those are real battles. These, remember, I assume because I can that one, but then I don't know what this one is.
That one.
But because it's with all these others that are real ones, like it's got to be a real one, and I'm just an idiot, and I can't figure it out. So that's like I lost a lot of sleep. Says a lot about me. Trying to figure out what some of them are that I didn't know because I wanted to be complete, and in the end, I couldn't be in the book.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, some of them now I could fill in, but I still can't fill in all of them, which bothers me because they should be filled in a bowl. If that's a phrase. So yeah. So if you're like, where is that battle? Go find out, please, and let me know. And maybe it's one of the ones I don't have.
So Camelin is like the Battle of Kamlan.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that was supposed to be potentially where the last battle was going to be. Is that what you were saying? But then they moved it to the fields of Marilor?
Yeah, in the early drafts, that's where it was going to be.
Okay, so I don't know anything about the Battle of Kamlan.
Yeah, it's where Arthur bites it.
But okay, I knew that much. But
sorry,
we do have spoilers.
Are you going to do Baden Hill? Well, which one? No.
Okay, so we do have fighting around Camelin in the last book. Is there anything with strategy and the way things move there that has anything at all to do with the story of Battle of Kamlan? Is there any?
No.
Are there any tactics?
Because we don't know enough about the Battle of Kamlan.
We don't.
So we don't know. Battle of Kamlan is basically a name. It's most Arthurian battles are a name. Like, oh, the Battle of Mount Baden where things went bad. Like, cool. Where is that? What is that? We don't know. Okay. So yeah, tactically, strategically, no, there's nothing you can really map. Which it's so part of the reason, even when the battle of that we do get at the last battle, right? That's not based on an Arthurian one.
Okay.
Right, because
it's based on other
ones. Yeah. Read the book. That was a fun entry to write. Yeah. Woo, go Napoleon. Napoleon's a bad guy. I'm not.
We got about 12 minutes left. Any open Q&A? See somebody back there?
I will at the end, I think. Right?
Okay.
Okay.
So, you talked about the origins of, real world origins and myths and legends and things like that. And we recognize the connections with Lord of the Rings, but I've been curious if there are other, fictional, like influences of other fiction that are, I feel like I notice connections, but I don't know if they're real. So curious if there's influences from, other fiction, fantasy or sci-fi.
Yeah, probably. It's hard because those kind of influences often go back to the same influence, right? So you can look at the Aiel, for example, and you're like, man, that looks a lot like the Fremen in Dune. Yeah, because they're both drawn from the same stuff, right? So so is that? I mean, I know that Jordan is going back to the original stuff, right? Did he also read Dune along the way? Like, I mean, I don't know. And I know where the influence is coming from in the end, right? Which is the same place that Herbert's getting it from. So no surprise. So yeah, other than that, kind of smoking guns, the only ones I know of are all in the negative, which is him saying, like, leaving notes, I don't want to be too much like that or that. Sort of, self-recognition of that danger. I don't want this to read like this other person's work, so I'm going to go in this direction. I know of nothing that is a positive hit in the other direction. It's always shying away from something. Is that?
That's best.
How you doing?
I'm good. To the best of my knowledge, yeah, because he didn't want to read other people's fantasy while he was writing, because it was dangerous, and it also made him feel like he had no rest. So he read murder mysteries or history. So I mean, that was something he did not want to happen, was other people's idea, except for, of course, Tolkien, who he used as an introduction.
Good question.
There is an online question that sort of reads, did RJ ever hints where Matt and Sean Chen's storyline is leading? Are they ever going to stop enslaving Chen?
Not long before his death, when he decided he was going to share the story so it could be told, I would sit with him with a tape recorder every day. Well, every day he was up to it, and ask him questions to try and fill in gaps. And I asked him some point about that, and his answer was something along the lines of, one day Tuon's going to realize the trap she's made for herself, and things will change. But what things will change exactly means is a little unclear.
Very isolated.
Yeah.
Was there some origin that you found that was arbitrary or petty that you found very entertaining?
Petty.
An arbitrary or petty. Yeah, I like this color, so I'm going to name a character after it, something like that. An arbitrary or petty origin.
Well, I mean, the Jen Eyre that Maria mentioned before, I've had so many people like, no, for real, where do you get that from? I'm like, no, honestly, I'm getting that, like, that's where that came from, which is sort of just bizarre and seemingly random, right? Do you have others that are?
Well, this one is, it's a little different. Okay, Jim had a cousin named Wilson, who they were like brothers. And Wilson told me at one point that Billy Conger was him. Because Jim, everybody else called Wilson Will or Wilson, but Jim called him Bill at one point. And Wilson was sure that he was Billy Conger. Of course, when he told me this, Jim had already died, so I couldn't confirm. But the relationship those two had, it would not astonish me if it were true.
It would make sense, yeah.
Hello.
That would work.
Yahtzee.
Question about battles and military might coming out of the books where they ended. Knowing military tactic, resources, skill level, and everything. Who do you think is the most dominant force coming out of that battle? If we look at groups or countries, if we consider the Aila country, the Shanshan, the other coalitions, who do you think coming out of it will be the strongest?
I would never bet against the IEL. That would be my answer there. Yeah, I would never bet against them. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say we definitely have to save a little bit of time at the end. I think Michael might have something
I might
to share with us.
All right, so last question. And then...
Sure.
Last question is something that always sticks in the back of my mind is the introduction of gunpowder and cannons to the power structure. I mean, a cannon can be made quicker than an isodite can take to train. How do you see that projecting into the future would affect, after the last battle, the politics and the landscape?
The sequels would have been interesting. There's a lot of strands that are pulling in a lot of different directions. Yeah, I'm not sure how deeply I want to speculate into that, other than to say, there's some amazing stuff that would have happened.
Got like steam power train.
Yeah, would have been rocking and rolling. Yeah, is that fair? That's fair. All right. Do you guys want to hear an entry that didn't make the book but would today? So, prefacing this, I'm sorry it didn't make it in, because I know it upset some people where they were like, where is men? Yeah, I didn't feel like it was firm enough to include in the book at that time, but I do now, and it has the confirmation of Maria and Harriet, who said I could say this. Okay, so yes, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Harriet. So here you go, Elmendretta Farshaw. Consistent with the important role she played in his books, Jordan was working on her name from an early point. Handwritten in the margin of his 1987 name list is, and I'm quoting, Min, short for Menelea or Minoralai, end quote. In the end, he seems to have changed the name to be a distant echo of Homer's Cassandra, who is doomed to tell the truth of a dreaded future but never be believed. Though she shares her name, Min, with an Egyptian god of masculine virility and fertility, there is no indication that Jordan consciously utilized this reference in creating his character. As for Min's surname, it refers to her visionary abilities as someone who far saw. There you go. Yeah, that was, I didn't have the handwritten note at that point. Hadn't seen that. So found it and was like, oh, yes, there we go. There we go. Yeah, and on any of these things, and I keep saying this, I say it in the book, but there's more, right? Everything in the origins of the Wheel of Time comes with and more. And if you're like, but could it also be a lot of times? Yeah, probably. Just didn't have enough information to say for sure, that kind of thing. So yeah, and if we do a Origins 2 or something like that, Morigins. Nice. Min will be in there at that point, so we'll see.
And can I say, if you read this book and you ever intend to go look at his notes, definitely look at the end notes where Dr. Livingston calls to specific boxes and folders. So if there's something in particular that interests you, you want to learn more about, take notes, prepare because there is a lot of material and you'll need to narrow it down before you go. But there's a lot right here in the end notes that can lead you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's all for me.
We might have time for one more question. Anyone had a burning question in mind? Not?
Burning?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.